When Camille rushes to catch her flight home, she boards the wrong plane and ends up in Paris with a mysterious billionaire. What began as a mistake may just change everything. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Camille Harper checked her watch again and groaned. Her flight was boarding in 10 minutes and she was still stuck in the security line at JFK Airport. After 4 days in New York for her best friend's wedding, all she wanted was to get back to her small flower shop in Charleston. Come on, she muttered, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Her red-eye flight had landed that morning, and she'd spent the entire day dealing with her missing suitcase before rushing to the airport for her return flight. When she finally made it through security, Camille grabbed her carry-on and ran toward her gate. Her brown curls bounced wildly as she dodged other travelers. The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal, making her heart race even faster. Final boarding call for... The rest of the announcement was drowned out by the noise of the crowd. Camille spotted a gate where passengers were boarding and rushed toward it. She handed her crumpled boarding pass to the attendant, who barely glanced at it before waving her through. "Thank you." Camille called over her shoulder, hurrying down the jetway. She was so relieved to have made her flight that she didn't notice anything unusual until she stepped onto the plane. Instead of the cramped budget airline she'd expected, she found herself in what looked like someone's luxurious living room with wings. "Oh my goodness," she whispered, frozen in place. A flight attendant in a crisp uniform approached her with a smile. "Welcome aboard, Miss..." She paused, looking confused. "Harper, Camille Harper," Camille said automatically, still staring at the plush leather seats and gleaming wood tables. "I don't believe you're on our passenger list, Ms. Harper," the attendant said politely. Before Camille could respond, a deep voice spoke from the back of the cabin. "Is there a problem, Sophie?" Camille turned to see a man rising from one of the seats. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that fell slightly over one eye. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than Camille made in a month at her flower shop. "I'm so sorry," Camille stammered, her southern accent growing stronger with her embarrassment. "I think I got on the wrong plane." The man's eyebrows rose slightly as he studied her. He held an espresso cup in one hand, and his steel blue eyes regarded her with what seemed like mild amusement. "Apparently," he said, his voice carrying the faintest trace of a French accent. "I'll leave right away," Camille said, backing up toward the door. "My real flight is probably looking for me." "Your flight to where?" the man asked, setting down his cup. "Charleston, South Carolina," she added, in case he didn't know. "Rich people sometimes didn't keep track of regular places. And how did you end up on my private jet instead?" He didn't sound angry, just curious. "I don't know," Camille admitted. "I was running late, and I heard a final boarding call, and I just ran. The gate attendant took my pass, so I thought..." She trailed off, realizing how ridiculous she sounded. To her surprise, the corner of the man's mouth twitched into something almost like a smile. "Sophie," he said to the flight attendant, "would you give us a moment?" The woman nodded and disappeared toward the front of the plane. "I'm Lucien Darcy," the man said, extending his hand. Camille took it hesitantly. "Camille Harper." "You look exhausted, Miss Harper," Lucien observed. "It's been a long day," she admitted. "My suitcase is somewhere between here and Charleston. I haven't slept in about 30 hours, and now I've probably missed my flight home." "What's in Charleston?" The question caught her off guard. "My flower shop, my family, my life." Lucien nodded, thoughtfully, then glanced out the window where airport workers were preparing for takeoff. "And what if you didn't go back to Charleston today?" he asked. Camille blinked. "Excuse me? What if you came to Paris instead?" Camille laughed, then stopped when she realized he wasn't joking. "Paris? As in France? That's where this plane is headed," Lucien said. "I can't go to Paris. I don't even have my suitcase or a passport." She patted her purse frantically, then remembered. "Wait, I do have my passport. I needed it for my friend's destination wedding next year. But still, I can't just go to Paris." "Why not?" Lucien asked simply. Because I have responsibilities. My shop, my employees, my father needs his medication, and my brother..." "Can you call them?" Camille nodded slowly. "Yes, but..." "Then call them. Tell them you'll be gone for 2 days. I'll have you back in Charleston by Sunday night. Sunday? Today is Friday? Exactly. 2 days in Paris. Lucian's eyes held hers, and for a moment, Camille felt like she was drowning in them. I don't understand, she said finally. Why would you want me to come to Paris? You don't even know me. Something flickered across Lucien's face then, a shadow of sadness, quickly hidden. Let's just say I was meant to be traveling with someone. Else today, plans changed, and now here you are on my plane by accident. He shrugged elegantly. Maybe it's not an accident at all. I don't believe in fate, Camille said firmly. Neither do I. Lucien smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. But I do believe in making choices. So what's your choice, Camille Harper? Back to Charleston and your regular life? Or Paris for 2 days? The captain's voice came over the intercom. Mr. Darcy, we're cleared for takeoff. Will our unexpected guest be staying? Lucien didn't take his eyes off Camille. Well? Camille thought of her small apartment above the flower shop, of the same street she'd walked every day for years, of her carefully planned, predictable life. I must be crazy, she whispered. Lucien raised an eyebrow. Yes, she said louder, this time. Yes, I'll go to Paris. Lucien pressed a button on the wall. She's staying, Captain. Proceed with our original flight plan. As the jet began to taxi down the runway, Camille sank into the seat across from Lucien, her mind racing. I should call my assistant at the shop, she said, pulling out her phone, with shaking hands. The satellite phone will work better once we're in the air, Lucien advised. Sophie can show you how to use it. Camille nodded, still not quite believing what was happening. I've never been out of the country before, except for Canada once, but that hardly counts. Paris will be quite different from Charleston, Lucien said, studying her with those intense eyes. I guess you do this kind of thing all the time, Camille said. Jetting off to Paris on a whim? Not exactly, Lucien replied. This trip was planned months ago. He looked away, his jaw tightening slightly. Camille sensed there was more to the story but didn't push. Well, thank you for letting me crash your trip. I promise I won't be in your way. I'm counting on you being very much in my way, Ms. Harper, Lucien said, his voice low and serious. That's rather the point. The plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the air. Camille gripped the armrests, her heart pounding. What was she doing? This wasn't like her at all. She never took risks, never did anything spontaneous. She was reliable, Camille, who always put everyone else first. Having second thoughts? Lucien asked, watching her face. About 1,000 of them, she admitted. He nodded toward the window. Look outside. Camille turned to see New York City spread out beneath them, a glittering carpet of lights in the fading daylight. It's beautiful, she breathed. That's just the beginning, Lucien promised. As the plane climbed higher, Sophie returned with a glass of champagne for Camille. Welcome aboard, Ms. Harper, she said with a knowing smile. Can I get you anything else? Just some answers, Camille muttered, taking the glass. But I don't think you have those. After Sophie left, Camille turned back to Lucien. So, Mr. Darcy, Lucien, please. Lucien, what exactly does one do in Paris for 2 days? Whatever one wants, he replied. But I have a few suggestions if you're interested. I'm at your mercy, Camille said, then blushed at how that sounded. Lucien's eyes darkened slightly. I'll remember that. The champagne was making her brave. You still haven't told me why you're doing this. Taking a complete stranger to Paris isn't normal behavior, even for billionaires. What makes you think I'm a billionaire? Camille gestured around the private jet. Wild guess. Lucien actually chuckled at that, a warm sound that transformed his face. Fair enough. To answer your question, let's just say I've been alone lately. And sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger than to people who think they know you. And what would you like to talk about? Camille asked. Nothing, Lucien said. Everything. I don't know yet. They fell into a comfortable silence as the plane reached cruising altitude. Camille found herself studying Lucien when he wasn't looking. There was something sad about him, a heaviness that all his money clearly couldn't fix. Later, after she'd called her assistant and arranged for her brother to check on their father, Camille stood to stretch her legs. The reality of what she was doing finally hit her. We're not actually going to Paris, are we? She whispered, staring at the stars outside the window. Lucien didn't look up from his wineglass. "We are. I just changed the flight plan." Her heart pounded. "Why would you do that?" He finally met her eyes, cool, unreadable, yet pierced with something tender. "Because I've flown alone too many times, and you looked like you needed to see something beautiful." Camille swallowed hard. The city, lights began to twinkle far below them, and neither of them said what they were really thinking. Hours later, when most of the cabin lights had been dimmed, Camille found herself unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. She watched Lucien working on his laptop, his face illuminated by the screen. "You should try to rest," he said without looking up. "Paris days start early." "I still can't believe I'm doing this," Camille said. "This isn't me. I don't just run off to foreign countries with strange men." "Am I strange?" Lucien asked, closing his laptop. "You know what I mean, men I don't know." "Well, we have about 6 more hours to fix that," Lucien said. "Ask me anything." Camille thought for a moment. "Why Paris? Do you live there?" "I have a home there, one of several, but Paris is where my family is from." His expression softened. "It's where I feel most like myself." "And who is that? The real Lucien Darcy?" He seemed surprised by the question. "Most people ask about the business first." "I don't even know what your business is," Camille admitted. "Technology. Artificial intelligence, specifically. My company develops AI systems that help doctors diagnose rare diseases." "That sounds important," Camille said, impressed despite herself. "It can be," Lucien agreed. "But it's not who I am. Just what I do." "So who are you?" Lucien was quiet for so long that Camille thought he might not answer. "I'm still figuring that out," he said finally. Camille yawned, her eyelids growing heavy. "Well, when you do, let me know." The last thing she remembered before drifting off to sleep was Lucien gently covering her with a soft blanket. "Sweet dreams, Camille Harper," he murmured. "Tomorrow, Paris awaits." In her dreams, Camille was floating among the stars, and someone was holding her hand, guiding her through the darkness toward a city of light. And for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of where the journey might lead. Camille woke to the gentle touch of sunlight on her face. For a moment, she was disoriented, expecting to see the familiar ceiling of her apartment above the flower shop. Instead, she found herself looking at the curved interior of a private jet. "Good morning," came Lucien's voice. "We'll be landing in Paris in about 30 minutes. Camille sat up quickly, smoothing her rumpled clothes. "I can't believe I slept so long." "You needed it," Lucien said. He looked freshly showered and was wearing a different suit than yesterday. "Sophie has prepared breakfast if you're hungry." "As you." If on cue, the flight attendant appeared with a tray of croissants, fruit and coffee. "Bonjour, Miss Harper. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you," Camille said, suddenly aware of how she must look after sleeping in her clothes. "Is there somewhere I could freshen up?" "The bathroom is fully stocked," Sophie said with a smile. "And Mr. Darcy asked me to give you this." She handed Camille a shopping bag with a designer logo that Camille recognized from magazines. Inside was a simple but elegant outfit: jeans, a soft blue blouse, and a light jacket. "I hope they fit," Lucien said, not meeting her eyes. "I had Sophie estimate your size." "Thank you," Camille said, touched by the gesture. "But you didn't have to." "It was selfish, really," Lucien interrupted. "I couldn't have you walking around Paris in yesterday's clothes. People would talk," Camille laughed. "Heaven forbid anyone gossip about the mysterious American woman with Lucien Darcy." Something flashed in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, before he smiled. "Exactly. My reputation is at stake." In the bathroom, Camille was amazed by the luxurious shower and the array of toiletries. She showered quickly and put on the new clothes, which fit perfectly. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her brown curls fell softly around her face, and the blue blouse brought out the warmth in her eyes. When she returned to the main cabin, Lucien was on the phone speaking rapid French. He looked up as she approached, and for a moment, he seemed to lose his train of thought. "Je te rappellerai," he said into the phone before hanging up. "The clothes suit you." "They're perfect," Camille said. "Thank you." "It's the least I could." "Do after kidnapping you to another continent," Lucien replied, the hint of a smile playing at his lips. The plane began its descent, and Camille's stomach fluttered with nervous excitement. She gazed out the window as Paris came into view, the winding Seine, the Eiffel Tower, the city spread out like a living postcard. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined," she whispered. "Wait until you see it up close," Lucien promised. After they landed, a sleek black car was waiting on the tarmac. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, greeted Lucien warmly in French. "Antoine has worked for my family for 20 years, Lucien explained as they settled into the back seat. "He knows Paris better than anyone." "Bonjour, Antoine," Camille said, using one of the few French words she knew. Antoine beamed at her in the rearview mirror. "Bonjour, mademoiselle. Welcome to Paris." As they drove through the city, Camille pressed her face to the window like a child, trying to absorb every detail. The morning light bathed the old buildings in a golden glow, and the streets were coming alive with people heading to work or sitting at outdoor cafes. "Where are we going first?" she asked. "To my apartment," Lucien said. "You can rest there, while I take care of some business. Then this evening I'll show you my Paris." "Your Paris?" "Not the Eiffel Tower or the Louvre, though we can see those if you want, but the real Paris, the one tourists don't usually find." His apartment turned out to be a stunning penthouse overlooking the Seine, with floor-to-ceiling windows and antique furniture that looked both valuable and well-loved. "This was my grandparents' home," Lucien explained as he showed her around. "I grew up visiting them here every summer." "It's beautiful," Camille said, trailing her fingers along a bookshelf, filled with leather-bound volumes. "It feels like a real home, not just a place to stay." Lucien looked pleased. "Most people only notice the address and the view." "Well, those are nice too," Camille admitted with a smile. "Make yourself comfortable," Lucien said. "The guest room is through there. I've asked my housekeeper, Madame Bouvier, to find you anything else you might need. I have a meeting I can't miss, but I'll be back by 5. "Thank you," Camille said, "for all of this. It still doesn't seem real." Lucien hesitated at the door. "Camille, why did you say yes to coming here with me?" Camille considered the question. "Honestly, I'm not sure. Maybe because it seemed like the universe was giving me a chance to do something different, to be someone different, even if just for 2 days." Lucien nodded, his expression unreadable. "I'll see you at 5. After he left, Camille explored the apartment, marveling at the artwork on the walls and the views from every window. Madame Bouvier, a plump woman with silver hair, arrived shortly, with more clothes, toiletries, and a warm smile that needed no translation. Despite her intention to stay awake, Camille found herself drifting off on the comfortable sofa in the living room. She was awakened by the sound of the front door opening. "I'm sorry," Lucien said, seeing her sleepy face. "I didn't mean to wake you." Camille sat up, blinking. "What time is it?" "Just after 5. Are you ready for our evening out?" "Absolutely," she said, suddenly wide awake. "Just let me change." In the guest room, she found an elegant but simple black dress laid out on the bed, with a note from Madame Bouvier explaining that Lucien had requested something suitable for dinner. Camille put it on, grateful again for how perfectly it fit. When she emerged, Lucien was waiting by the window, silhouetted against the early evening sky. He'd changed into dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made him look younger, less like a CEO and more like the boy who'd spent summers in this apartment. "So you look lovely," he said simply. "So do you," Camille replied. "I mean nice, you look nice." Lucien smiled. "Shall we?" Their first stop was a small jazz club tucked away on a side street in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. The basement venue was intimate and smoky, with just a dozen tables arranged around a small stage where a trio played soulful music. "My father used to bring me here," Lucien said, as they sipped wine at a corner table. "He loved jazz. Said it was the sound of freedom." "Is your father still alive?" Camille asked. Lucien shook his head. "He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. My mother passed when I was 12. "I'm sorry," Camille said. "My mum died when I was 16. Cancer. It changes you, doesn't it?" Lucien said quietly. losing a parent young. It does, Camille agreed. It's why I stayed in Charleston to help my dad raise my brother, Tommy. He's 21 now in college. And your father? Getting older. He has good days and bad days. That's why I can't stay away too long. Lucien studied her face in the dim light. You've sacrificed a lot for them, Camille shrugged. That's what family does. Not all families, Lucien said, a hint of bitterness in his voice. After the jazz club, they walked along the Seine as the lights of the city began to shimmer on the water. Lucien pointed out buildings and shared stories from his childhood, and Camille found herself laughing more than she had in years. Are you hungry? He asked as they crossed a bridge. Starving, she admitted. He led her to a tiny restaurant with only 8 tables, where the owner greeted him like an old friend. Claude doesn't speak English, Lucien explained as they were seated, but his food speaks a universal language. The meal was the most delicious Camille had ever tasted. Simple French dishes served with wine that made her feel warm and light-headed. Tell me about your flower shop, Lucien said as they lingered over dessert. Harper's Blooms. It's nothing. Fancy, Camille said. My grandmother started it, then my mom took over, and now it's mine. We do weddings, funerals, birthdays, all the moments when people need flowers to say what they can't say in words. And you enjoy it? I love it, Camille said, her face lighting up. Every arrangement tells a story. It's not just about making something pretty. It's about capturing a feeling. Like what? Lucien asked, genuinely interested. Well, take weddings. Some brides want romantic, soft arrangements with roses and peonies. Others want something wild and untamed, with vines and unexpected blooms. It says something about who they are, what kind of love they want. And what would your wedding flowers look like? Lucien asked, his eyes never leaving her face. Camille blushed. I haven't thought about it much. I've been too busy helping other brides. But that wasn't entirely true. She had thought about it. Soft blue hydrangeas, white gardenias for their scent, and sprigs of lavender tucked in for remembrance. Flowers that spoke of home and comfort, but with a touch of something dreamy. After dinner, they continued their walk through the nighttime streets. Lucien took her hand to guide her down, a narrow passage, and neither of them let go afterward. There's one more place I want to show you tonight, he said, leading her to a small park. In the center was a simple wooden bench beneath a flowering tree. This is where my parents had their first kiss, Lucien said, sitting down and pulling her gently beside him. My father was an American student studying abroad. My mother was French, from an old family that didn't approve of Americans. They met at the Sorbonne and fell in love, despite everyone telling them it wouldn't work. But it did work, Camille asked. For 20 years, until my mother died, Lucien said. My father never remarried. He said he'd rather have had those 20 years with her than a lifetime with anyone else. The night air was cool, and Camille shivered slightly. Lucien slipped off his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. Thank you, she said, for sharing your Paris with me. Thank you for seeing it the way I do, he replied. Most people just see the glamour, the postcard version. Is that what happened with her? Camille asked before she could stop herself. The person who was supposed to be on this trip with you? Lucien stiffened beside her. How did you know? Just a guess, Camille said. This trip seems personal, not something you'd plan to do alone. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Her name is Claire. We were engaged for a year. The wedding was supposed to be next month. What happened? Camille asked softly. She left, Lucien said, his voice flat. 2 months ago, no real explanation. Just that she needed space and wasn't ready. I'm sorry, Camille said, placing her hand over his. The worst part, Lucien continued, staring at their hands. I had already planned this trip as a surprise. Paris for our engagement anniversary. I was going to give her my grandmother's ring here on this bench where my parents' story began. And you came anyway, Camille said, understanding dawning. Alone. Until you got on the wrong plane, Lucien said with a sad smile. The universe has a strange sense of humor. They sat in silence, the weight of his confession hanging between them. Camille felt a strange ache in her chest, sympathy for his pain, but also something else she couldn't quite name. We should get back, Lucien said finally. It's getting late. As they walked to where Antoine was waiting with the car, Camille felt a shift between them. Lucien seemed both closer and more distant, as if sharing his story had both connected them and reminded him of the walls he'd built. Back at the apartment, they stood awkwardly in the hallway between their rooms. "Thank you for tonight," Camille said. "It was magical." "There's more to see tomorrow," Lucien promised. "If you're not tired of my company yet." "Not even close," Camille admitted. For a moment, Lucien looked as if he might say something more, or perhaps even kiss her. Instead, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. "Good night, Camille Harper," he said softly. "Good night, Lucien," she replied, her heart racing. In her room, Camille stood by the window, looking out at the Paris night. What was she doing here, falling for a man she'd just met? A man who was clearly still in love with someone else. In less than 2 days, she would be back in Charleston, and this would all feel like a dream. But what a beautiful dream it was. Meanwhile, in his room, Lucien sat on the edge of his bed, holding a small velvet box. Inside was his grandmother's ring, the one meant for Claire. He snapped the box shut and put it back in the drawer. Then he pulled out his phone and looked at the last message Claire had sent him. "I'm sorry. I just can't." He started to type. A response, something he'd done 100 times but never sent. This time, though, his fingers paused over the screen. He thought of Camille's smile, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her flowers, how she'd seen past his wealth to the person underneath. For the first time in 2 months, he deleted the draft without saving it. Then he turned off his phone and went to bed, dreaming not of what he'd lost, but of what he might have found by accident. Camille woke to the smell of fresh coffee and pastries. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the guest room, and for a moment she lay still, savoring the memory of last night. Lucien's Paris had been everything he'd promised, intimate, charming, and filled with personal history. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Camille, are you awake?" Lucien called. "Yes, come in," she answered, sitting up and quickly smoothing her hair. Lucien entered, carrying a tray laden with croissants, fruit, and 2 steaming cups of coffee. He was dressed casually in jeans and a light sweater, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him yet. "I thought we'd have breakfast here before heading out," he said, setting the tray on the bed. "I hope you slept well." "Like a dream," Camille said, reaching for a coffee cup. "Thank you for this." "It's nothing. Madame Bouvier insists no one should start their day without proper food." "She's right," Camille said, biting into a croissant. "Oh my goodness, this is amazing." "There's a small bakery around the corner," Lucien explained. "The owner gets up at 3 every morning to bake. His family has owned the shop for 4 generations. That's what I love about this city," Camille said. "Everything has a story, a history." "Speaking of stories," Lucien said, "I've been thinking about what to show you today. It's our only full day together, and there's so much to see." The way he said "together" made Camille's heart skip. "I'm in your hands," she said, "though I wouldn't mind seeing at least one tourist spot, just so I can tell people back home I actually saw the real Paris." Lucien smiled. "I think we can manage that. But first, there's somewhere special I'd like to take you." An hour later, they were strolling through a lush garden hidden behind high stone walls. Unlike the manicured public parks, this one was wild and romantic, with overgrown roses climbing ancient statues and a small, forgotten fountain bubbling in the center. "This is beautiful," Camille said, reaching out to touch a velvet red rose. "Where are we?" "My family's old estate," Lucien explained. "The main house was sold years ago, but I kept the garden. No one comes here except the gardener, who visits once a month to make sure it doesn't completely return to wilderness." "You like it this way," Camille observed. "A little wild." "Nature shouldn't be too controlled," Lucien said. "Beauty needs freedom to grow." Camille smiled, thinking of her own approach to flower arrangements. "I agree. The most stunning bouquets always have an element of surprise, something unexpected that catches the eye." They walked in comfortable silence, occasionally stopping to admire a particularly beautiful bloom or an interesting view. In a small clearing, Lucien spread out a blanket he'd brought in a backpack. "A second breakfast?" Camille teased as he produced a bottle of water and 2 apples. "Just a rest," he said, sitting down and patting the space beside him. This was my hiding place as a child. Whenever my parents brought me to visit my grandparents, I would sneak out here with a book and read for hours. What kind of books did you like? Camille asked, settling beside him. Adventure stories. Jules Verne, Alexandre Dumas. Stories about brave people who explored the world. He smiled ruefully. Ironic, considering I grew up to spend most of my time in boardrooms and in front of computers. But you're successful, Camille pointed out. Your company helps people. It does, Lucien acknowledged. But sometimes I wonder if I've become too predictable, too safe. Says the man who invited a complete stranger to Paris, Camille reminded him with a smile. Lucien laughed, a free, genuine sound that transformed his face. Touché. Perhaps there's hope for me yet. Tell me more about your company, Camille said. What exactly does it do? We develop AI systems that help doctors identify rare diseases, Lucien explained. There are thousands of rare conditions that most physicians never encounter in their careers. Our program analyzes symptoms and medical history to suggest possibilities that might otherwise be overlooked. That's amazing, Camille said, genuinely impressed. How you're literally saving lives. Sometimes, Lucien admitted, though it's the doctors who do the real work. We just give them better tools. Don't downplay it, Camille said. Not everyone uses their success to help others. Lucien studied her face. You really mean that, don't you? You're not just being polite. Of course I mean it, Camille said, surprised. Why wouldn't I? Because most people I meet either want something from me or are trying to impress me, Lucien said bluntly. It's refreshing to meet someone who just sees me. Their eyes met, and Camille felt a flutter in her stomach. For a moment she thought he might lean in and kiss her. Instead, he stood up and offered his hand. Come on, he said. There's more to see. They spent the morning exploring more of Lucien's childhood haunts. A small bookstore where the owner still remembered him as a boy, a hidden cafe where they ate lunch, and a bridge where he'd made wishes by throwing coins into the Seine. Did your wishes come true? Camille asked as they leaned against the bridge railing. Some of them, Lucien said. The ones about business success, certainly. The others, he trailed off, his expression clouding. Like Claire, Camille said. Softly, Lucien nodded. I thought she was the one. We met at a charity gala 2 years ago. She was beautiful, intelligent, from a good family. Everyone said we were perfect together. But, Camille prompted gently. But I don't think she ever really knew me, Lucien admitted, or wanted to. She loved the idea of being with Lucien Darcy, tech billionaire. The real me? I'm not sure she ever saw him. Her loss, Camille said simply. Lucien looked at her with surprise, then smiled. Thank you for that. Now, I believe I promised you a tourist spot. They spent the afternoon at the Louvre, with Lucien guiding Camille through his favorite exhibits. Unlike the usual tourists rushing to see the Mona Lisa, they wandered through lesser-known galleries, admiring paintings and sculptures that spoke to them. This is my favorite, Lucien said, stopping in front of a small painting of a garden at twilight. It's not famous, but there's something about the light. It's peaceful, Camille agreed. Like the moment between day and night when everything gets quiet and still. Lucien looked at her with appreciation. Exactly. Most people walk right past it. After the museum, they visited a rooftop bakery that Lucien had mentioned the night before. The tiny shop was accessible only by climbing 5 flights of narrow stairs, but the reward was worth it. Lavender honey croissants and a breathtaking view of the city. I can't believe places like this exist, Camille said, watching the sunset paint the buildings gold. Paris is full of secrets, Lucien said. That's why I love it. You can live here your whole life and still discover new corners, new stories, as a way. The evening approached. They returned to Lucien's apartment to change for dinner. Madame Bouvier had laid out a stunning red dress for Camille, more elegant than anything she'd ever worn. This is too much, she protested when she saw Lucien waiting for her in the living room, handsome in a dark suit. It's perfect, he countered, his eyes taking in the way the dress hugged her curves. You're perfect. The restaurant he took her to was on the top floor of a historic building, with a terrace overlooking the Eiffel Tower. As they were seated at a table with a spectacular view, Camille felt like she'd stepped into a movie. "I know this is more tourist Paris than last night," Lucienne said as the waiter poured champagne, "but some clichés exist for a reason." "It's magical," Camille assured him. "Thank you for sharing all of this with me." Their dinner was exquisite, the conversation flowing easily between them. Camille told him stories about her most demanding brides, and Lucienne shared tales of business, deals gone wrong. They laughed more than either had in months. As they finished dessert, the Eiffel Tower began its hourly light show, sparkling like diamonds against the night sky. "Make a wish," Lucienne said softly. Camille closed her eyes, wishing that whatever was happening between them wouldn't end when she returned to Charleston tomorrow. When she opened her eyes, Lucienne was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Dance with me," he said suddenly. "Here, there's no dance floor. We don't need one," he said, standing and offering his hand. He led her to a small space at the edge of the terrace, where the lights of Paris spread out beneath them. As he took her in his arms, a violinist appeared and began to play a haunting melody. "You arranged this," Camille accused gently, settling into his embrace. "Guilty," Lucienne admitted, his hand warm on the small of her back. They swayed together, barely moving, their bodies perfectly aligned. Camille could feel his heart beating against hers, his breath warm on her hair. "Camille," he whispered, "I need to tell you something." She looked up at him, her eyes questioning. "I've never met anyone like you," he said. "The way you see the world, the way you see me. It's like you've known me forever." "I feel the same way," she admitted. "But tomorrow you go back to Charleston," he continued, his expression troubled. "Back to your flowers and your family, and I go back to my life." "It doesn't have to end," Camille said, her voice barely audible. Lucienne's eyes darkened. "What are you saying?" Before she could answer, a commotion at the entrance to the terrace caught their attention. A woman was arguing with the maitre d', her voice rising. "I know he's here, let me through." Lucien stiffened, his face draining of color. "It can't be," he muttered. The woman pushed past the staff and stormed onto the terrace, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Lucienne and Camille. She was strikingly beautiful, with sleek blonde hair and a model's figure, dressed in designer clothes that screamed money. "Lucien," she called, striding toward them. "There you are, I've been looking everywhere for you." "Claire," Lucien said, his voice flat. "What are you doing here?" Claire, the ex-fiancée. Camille felt her perfect evening crumbling around her. "What am I doing here?" Claire repeated incredulously. "I came to find you. You haven't answered my calls or texts for weeks." "Because you made it clear we were over," Lucien said coldly. "Your exact words were, 'I just can't,' if I recall correctly." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I made a mistake, Luke, a terrible mistake. I was scared about the wedding, about forever. But I've had time to think, and I know now what I want, you, us." She glanced at Camille dismissively before turning back to Lucien. "Who's this? Your secretary?" Camille felt like she'd been slapped. Lucien's arm tightened around her waist. "This is Camille Harper," he said firmly, "and she's my guest." "Guest?" Claire laughed bitterly. "At our special place? Dancing to our song? That didn't take long, did it?" "Claire, you need to leave," Lucien said, his voice low and controlled. "We can talk tomorrow if you insist, but not now, not here." "I'm not going anywhere," Claire declared, crossing her arms. "Not until you hear me out. I love you, Lucien. I made a mistake, and I'm here to fix it." Camille gently pulled away from Lucien's arm. "I should go," she said quietly. "No," Lucien said, reaching for her hand. "Stay, please." But Camille could see the conflict in his eyes, the lingering feelings he still had for the woman who had broken his heart. "It's okay," she said with a sad smile. "You two have things to discuss. I'll wait for you at the apartment." Before Lucien could protest, Camille grabbed her purse and walked away, holding her head high despite the curious stares of the other diners. She managed to make it to the elevator before the tears started to fall. Back at Lucien's apartment, Camille changed into her own clothes, the ones she'd been wearing when she accidentally boarded his plane. It seemed like a lifetime ago. She packed the few belongings Madame Bouvier had provided, leaving the beautiful dresses hanging in the closet where they belonged. She considered leaving a note, but what could she say? Thanks for the fairy tale. Sorry it had to end. She'd known from the beginning that this wasn't real life. She didn't belong in Lucien's world of private jets and rooftop restaurants, and he clearly had unfinished business with Claire. Camille was sitting by the window, watching the lights of Paris when she heard the front door open. She braced herself, expecting to see Lucien and Claire together. Instead, Lucien entered alone, his tie loosened and his expression weary. "You're still here," he said with evident relief. "I was afraid you might have left." "Where would I go?" Camille asked with a small laugh. "I don't exactly know my way around Paris." Lucien crossed the room and sat beside her. "I'm so sorry about what happened. Claire had no right to show up like that, to speak to you that way." "She's still in love with you," Camille said simply. "She thinks she is," Lucien corrected. "She didn't want me until someone else did." Camille looked at him skeptically. "That someone being me? The random American who crashed your trip?" "There's nothing random about you, Camille Harper," Lucien said softly. "Meeting you may have been an accident, but everything since then has felt like destiny." Camille's heart raced at his words, but she forced herself to be practical. "What did you tell her?" "The truth," Lucien said. "That she broke my heart when she left, that I've spent 2 months trying to get over her, and that in 2 days with you, I've felt more alive than I did in 2 years with her." "Lucien," Camille whispered, afraid to hope. "I don't know what this is between us," he continued, taking her hands in his. "I don't know if it's real or just Paris magic, but I want to find out." "How?" "I go back to Charleston tomorrow. You have your life here and in New York." "What if you didn't go back tomorrow?" Lucien asked. "What if you stayed a few more days, or a week?" "I can't," Camille said regretfully. "My dad, the shop." "Then let me come to Charleston," Lucien said. "Let me see your world, meet your family, see the flowers you arrange with such care." "You'd do that?" Camille asked, surprised. "Trade Paris for small-town South Carolina?" "I'd trade it all for a chance to know you better," Lucien said seriously. Unless I'm misreading everything and you don't feel the same way." In answer, Camille leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Lucien pulled her closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "I'll take that as a yes," Lucien said with a smile. "Yes," Camille confirmed. "But Lucien, you need to be sure. Claire is gorgeous and sophisticated and part of your world. I'm just extraordinary." Lucien finished for her. "Kind, genuine, and the first person in years who's seen past my money and status to the real me." He kissed her again, and Camille let herself believe just for a moment that fairy tales could come true. Later, as they sat on the balcony under the stars, planning their return to Charleston, Camille's phone rang. It was her brother, Tommy. "Hey, Wildflower," he said when she answered, using his childhood nickname for her. "How's Paris?" "Amazing," Camille said, smiling at Lucien. "How's Dad?" There was a pause on the line. "That's why I'm calling. He fell this morning. He's in the hospital." Camille sat up straight, her happiness evaporating. "What? Is he okay?" "They're running tests," Tommy said. "He's stable, but the doctor mentioned something about his heart. They want to do more scans tomorrow. I'll come home right away," Camille said, her mind racing. "I'll try to get a flight tonight." "No need to panic yet," Tommy assured her. "He's conscious and complaining about the hospital food, which is a good sign, but they're keeping him for observation." After promising to call back with more information, Tommy hung up. Camille turned to Lucien, her face pale. "My father's in the hospital," she explained. "I need to get back to Charleston as soon as possible." "I'll make it happen," Lucien said without hesitation. "The jet can be ready in an hour." As they rushed to pack and make arrangements, Claire's unexpected arrival and their tentative plans for the future faded into the background. All that mattered now was getting Camille home to her family. What neither of them knew was that Claire had no intention of giving up so easily. As they prepared to leave Paris, she was making plans of her own. Plans that would test their newfound connection in ways they couldn't imagine. The flight back to Charleston was a blur for Camille. Despite the luxury of Lucienne's private jet, she couldn't relax, her mind filled with worry about her father. Lucienne sat beside her, holding her hand and offering quiet reassurance. "We'll be there in a few hours," he said, checking his watch. "Try to rest if you can." "I can't," Camille admitted. "I keep thinking about Dad all alone in that hospital room." "Tommy said he's stable," Lucienne reminded her gently. "And you'll be there soon." Camille nodded, grateful for his steady presence. "Thank you for doing this, for taking me home so quickly." "Of course," Lucienne said, as if chartering a private jet across the Atlantic at a moment's notice was nothing. "I just wish it were under better circumstances." As the plane began its descent into Charleston, Camille felt a strange mix of emotions. Just days ago, she'd been desperate to get home. Now, part of her wished she could have stayed in Paris with Lucienne a little longer, exploring their connection without the complications of real life. "What are you thinking?" Lucienne asked, noticing her expression. "That life has a funny way of bringing you exactly where you need to be," she said with a small smile. "Even if it's not where you thought you'd go." Lucienne squeezed her hand. "Like boarding the wrong plane?" "Exactly like that." The airport in Charleston was a far cry from the private airfield in Paris. As they walked through the terminal, Camille was acutely aware of the curious glances they received, her in her simple clothes, Lucienne in his expensive suit, both looking slightly rumpled from the overnight flight. Tommy was waiting for them at arrivals, his tall frame easy to spot in the crowd. At 21, he looked like a younger version of their father, with the same warm brown eyes and easy smile. "Wildflower," he called, wrapping Camille in a bear hug. "That was fast. I thought you'd be on a commercial flight tomorrow." "Change of plans," Camille said, stepping back to introduce Lucienne. "Tommy, this is Lucienne Darcy. Lucienne, my brother Tommy." Tommy's eyes widened slightly as he shook Lucienne's hand. "Darcy? As in Darcy Tech, the AI company?" "That's right," Lucien confirmed. "Wow, I've read all about your diagnostic systems. I'm pre-med at Charleston College," Tommy explained. Then he grinned at his sister. "You've been holding out on me." "Camille, when you said you met someone in New York, you didn't mention he was well." He gestured vaguely at Lucienne. "It's complicated," Camille said, feeling her cheeks warm. "How's Dad?" Tommy's expression grew serious. "They're still running tests, but the doctor thinks it was a minor heart attack. They want to keep him for a few days, maybe do a procedure to clear a blockage." "Let's go see him," Camille said. "Right now." As they drove to the hospital in Tommy's old pickup truck, Lucienne took in the sights of Charleston, the historic buildings, the palmetto trees, the slower pace of life so different from New York or Paris. "It's beautiful here," he commented. "I can see why you love it." "It's home," Camille said simply. Charleston Memorial Hospital was a modern building on the outskirts of the historic district. Camille led the way to her father's room, with Lucienne hanging back slightly to give her space. Robert Harper was sitting up in bed, looking pale but alert. His face lit up when he saw his daughter. "There's my girl," he said, holding out his arms. "What are you doing back so soon? I thought you were in Paris." "I came back early," Camille said, hugging him carefully, mindful of the IV in his arm. "Someone had to make sure you're behaving yourself." "It was just a little spell," Robert insisted. "These doctors are making a fuss over nothing." "A heart attack isn't nothing, Dad," Tommy said firmly. "Minor heart attack," Robert corrected. "Very minor. Barely worth mentioning." His eyes shifted to Lucienne, who was standing by the door. "And who's this?" "Dad, this is Lucienne Darcy," Camille said. "He's a friend from New York." "Must be some friend to follow you all the way to Charleston," Robert observed with a knowing look. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Harper," Lucienne said, stepping forward to shake Robert's hand. "I'm sorry it's under these circumstances." "Call." "P. Robert," Camille's father said, studying Lucienne with interest. "So you're the reason my daughter suddenly decided to take a trip to Paris?" "Actually, it was more of an accident," Lucien admitted with a smile. "A very fortunate one." Before Robert could ask more questions, a doctor entered the room with a clipboard. "Mr. Harper, I have your test results. Oh, I see you have company." "My daughter," Robert said proudly, "and apparently her boyfriend." "Dad," Camille protested, blushing. "We should step outside," Tommy suggested, ushering Camille and Lucienne into the hallway while the doctor spoke with their father. As they waited, Camille paced nervously. "I should have been here," she said. "If I hadn't gone to New York for the wedding, if I hadn't gotten on that plane to Paris—" "Hey," Tommy interrupted gently. "This isn't your fault. Dad's been skipping his checkups and ignoring his diet for years. You can't watch him every minute." "Your brother's right," Lucien said. "And from what I can see, your father is a pretty stubborn man. Runs in the family," Tommy said with a meaningful look at his sister. The doctor emerged from the room a few minutes later and confirmed what Tommy had already told them. Robert had suffered a minor heart attack caused by a blockage in one of his coronary arteries. They wanted to perform an angioplasty the next day to clear it. "The procedure is routine," the doctor assured them. "With proper medication and lifestyle changes afterward, he should make a full recovery." Relief washed over Camille. "Thank you, doctor." After the doctor left, they returned to Robert's room. He seemed in good spirits, already complaining about the hospital food and the ban on his favorite snacks. "You need to take this seriously, Dad," Camille said, sitting on the edge of his bed. "No more bacon for breakfast every day. No more ignoring your medication." "Yes, ma'am," Robert said with mock seriousness. "You sound just like your mother." Camille's expression softened. "She'd want you to take care of yourself." Robert patted her hand. "I know, sweetheart. I promise I'll do better." Then he turned to Lucien. "So, young man, what are your intentions with my daughter?" "Dad!" Camille exclaimed, mortified. Lucien, however, didn't seem flustered. "Right now, my intention is to help her in any way I can while you recover," he said. "Beyond that, I hope to get to know her and her family better." Robert nodded approvingly. "Good answer. Where are you staying while you're in town?" "I haven't had a chance to arrange anything yet," Lucien admitted. "He can stay at the house," Tommy offered. "The guest room is clean." Camille looked at Lucien uncertainly. Their modest family home was a far cry from his luxury apartments in New York and Paris. "That would be perfect," Lucien said, as if reading her thoughts. "Thank you." After spending a few more hours with Robert, they left the hospital with promises to return the next morning for the procedure. Tommy drove them to the Harper home, a charming two-story house with a wide porch and blooming flowers in the front yard. "It's not much," Camille said as they walked up the path, "but it's home." "It's lovely," Lucien said sincerely. "You can feel the history here, the love." Inside, the house was filled with comfortable, well-worn furniture and family photos. Lucien paused to look at a picture of a young Camille with a woman who had the same warm smile. "Your mother?" he asked. Camille nodded. "That was taken about a year before she got sick." Tommy showed Lucien to the guest room while Camille unpacked her few belongings and took a quick shower. By the time she came downstairs, Tommy had ordered pizza and was showing Lucien his collection of vintage vinyl records. "I found them in the attic," Tommy was explaining. "Dad used to be a huge music buff." The three of them spent the evening, talking and eating pizza, with Tommy regaling Lucien with embarrassing stories from Camille's childhood. And then she came marching down the aisle with Dad's clippers, half her hair chopped off, announcing she was going to be a barber instead of a flower girl. Tommy finished laughing. "I was 5, Camille protested, though she was laughing too. Lucien watched her with a soft expression, clearly enjoying seeing this side of her. "I wish I could have known you then," he said. After Tommy went to bed, Camille and Lucien sat on fire. The porch swing, the night air heavy with the scent of jasmine. "Your family is wonderful," Lucien said, his arm around her shoulders. "I can see why you never wanted to leave." "They're everything to me," Camille agreed. "But sometimes I wonder if I've used them as an excuse to avoid taking risks, trying new things, like Paris." "Like Paris," she confirmed, "like falling for someone I just met." Lucien's arm tightened around her. "I'm glad you took that risk." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of crickets and distant traffic. "What happens now?" Camille finally asked, voicing the question that had been on her mind since they left Paris. "Now we take it one day at a time," Lucien said. "I've cleared my schedule for the week. I want to be here for you for your father's recovery." "And after that?" "After that we figure it out together," Lucien promised. "I have homes in New York and Paris, but I can work from anywhere. And Charleston seems like a lovely place to spend time. You'd do that. Split your time between here and New York. I'd do a lot more than that for you, Camille Harper, Lucienne said softly, tilting her face up to his for a gentle kiss. The next morning, they were at the hospital early for Robert's procedure. As they waited in the surgical lounge, Camille's phone rang. It was her assistant at the flower shop. "Lisa, hi," Camille answered. "Is everything okay at the shop?" "Mostly," Lisa replied, sounding stressed. "But the Henderson wedding is tomorrow, and Mrs. Henderson is having a meltdown about the centerpieces. She says they're not what she ordered, but I checked the contract, and they're exactly what she approved." Camille sighed. "Put her on the phone." After 15 minutes of soothing the nervous bride's mother and promising to personally oversee the final arrangements, Camille hung up. "Problem at work?" Lucienne asked. "Nothing new," Camille said. "Just a nervous client. But I should probably stop by the shop after Dad's procedure. The Henderson wedding is our biggest event this month. I'd love to see where you work," Lucienne said. The procedure went smoothly, and by afternoon Robert was back in his room, groggy but stable. The doctor assured them that everything had gone as planned. "He'll need to rest for a few days," the doctor told Camille and Tommy. "But he can go home tomorrow if his vitals remain stable." With Robert sleeping peacefully, Camille decided it was a good time to check on the shop. Tommy stayed at the hospital while Lucienne drove Camille downtown in her father's old car. Harper's Blooms was located on a charming street lined with small independent businesses. The storefront was painted a cheerful yellow with window boxes full of colorful flowers. As Camille unlocked the door, the familiar scent of fresh blooms welcomed her home. "This is exactly how I imagined it," Lucienne said, looking around at the displays of arrangements and potted plants. "It feels like you." "My grandmother opened it 60 years ago," Camille explained, running her hand along the old wooden counter. "It started as just a little stand selling flowers from her garden. Now we do weddings and events all over the state." Lisa, a college student who worked part-time, looked up from where she was arranging roses. Her eyes widened when she saw Lucienne. "Camille!" "You're back," she exclaimed, then added in a whisper, "Who's that?" "Lisa, this is Lucienne Darcy," Camille introduced them. "Lucienne, my assistant and lifesaver, Lisa." "Nice to meet you," Lucienne said warmly, shaking Lisa's hand. "Likewise," Lisa said, clearly curious but too professional to pry. Camille checked the orders and inspected the Henderson wedding flowers while Lucienne wandered around the shop, admiring the arrangements and asking questions about different blooms. "You really love this place, don't you?" he observed as Camille gently adjusted a spray of baby's breath. "It's more than just a shop to me," Camille admitted. "It's my heritage, my family's legacy." Before Lucienne could respond, the bell above the door jingled as someone entered. Camille looked up and froze. Claire stood in the doorway looking impossibly glamorous in designer clothes that seemed wildly out of place in the small Charleston flower shop. "There you are," Claire said to Lucienne, ignoring Camille completely. "I've been looking all over town for you." "Claire," Lucienne said, his voice cold. "What are you doing here?" "Following you, obviously," Claire replied with a brittle smile. "You left Paris so suddenly I was worried." "How did you even find me?" Lucienne demanded. "Your pilot isn't as discreet as you might think," Claire said. "It wasn't hard to charm the flight plan out of him." She finally acknowledged Camille with a dismissive glance. "So this is where you work? How quaint." Camille straightened her shoulders. "Can I help you find something? We have a lovely selection of go-away arrangements." Lisa stifled a laugh behind the counter, and even Lucienne's lips twitched. Claire's eyes narrowed. "Cute, but I'm not here for flowers. I'm here for Lucienne. We have unfinished business." "No, we don't," Lucienne said firmly. "I told you in Paris, we're done. Whatever we had is over." "Because of her?" Claire asked incredulously, pointing at Camille. "This small-town nobody. What could she possibly offer that I can't?" "Authenticity," Lucienne replied without hesitation. "Kindness. A heart that isn't calculating what she can get from me with every smile." Claire's perfect composure cracked. "That's not fair. I loved you." "You loved what I represented," Lucienne corrected. "The status, the lifestyle, but you never really saw me, Claire. Not the way Camille does." You've known her for what, 3 days? Claire scoffed. This is insane, even for you, Lucienne. Sometimes 3 days can tell you more about a person than 2 years, Lucienne said quietly. I'm sorry if I hurt you, Claire, but it's time for both of us to move on. Claire's face hardened. Fine. Have your little fling with Flower Girl. But when you get tired of playing small-town romance and want to rejoin the real world, don't come crying back to me. With that, she stormed out, leaving a cloud of expensive perfume in her wake. Well, Lisa said into the silence that followed, that was better than a soap opera. Despite the tension, Camille found herself laughing. Lisa, would you mind finishing up here? I think we need some fresh air. Outside, Camille and Lucien walked down the historic streets of Charleston, neither speaking until they reached a small park overlooking the harbor. I'm sorry about that, Lucien said finally. I had no idea she would follow us here. Are you sure it's over? Camille asked, voicing the fear that had been nagging at her since Claire's appearance in Paris. She clearly still has feelings for you. Claire has feelings for the idea of me, Lucien said. The successful CEO, the social status, the lifestyle. But she never wanted to know the real me, my doubts, my fears, the parts of me that aren't perfect or impressive. He took Camille's hands in his. With you, I don't have to pretend. From the moment you stumbled onto my plane, you've seen me, really seen me, in a way no one has in years. I'm afraid, Camille admitted. Afraid this is just a beautiful dream that will end when you go back to your real life. This is real life, Lucien insisted. Right here, right now. And yes, it's complicated. We live in different cities, we come from different worlds. But if there's one thing I've learned from my parents' story, it's that love finds a way when it's real. Love? Camille repeated, her heart skipping. Lucien smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. Too soon to say that word. Maybe, Camille said, though her heart disagreed. But I'm willing to find out where this goes. That's all I ask, Lucien said, pulling her close, one day at a time. As the sun set over Charleston harbor, they sealed their promise with a kiss, neither knowing exactly what the future held, but both certain they wanted to face it together. The next few days passed in a blur of hospital visits, work at the flower shop, and quiet evenings at the Harper home. Lucien fit into their lives with surprising ease, helping Tommy study for his med school exams, discussing business with Robert, and even learning to make Camille's favorite southern dishes with the elderly neighbor who'd been like a grandmother to the Harper children. When Robert was released from the hospital, Lucien insisted on hiring a part-time nurse to help with his recovery, waving away Camille's protests. Let me do this, he said. Not because you can't handle it, but because you shouldn't have to do everything alone. The Henderson wedding went perfectly, with Camille and Lucien working side by side to set up the elaborate floral displays. Seeing him in jeans and a t-shirt, happily following her instructions and charming the wedding party, Camille felt a surge of emotion that was becoming increasingly familiar. On Lucien's last night in Charleston, a week after they'd returned from Paris, they sat on the porch swing again, talking about the future. I have to go back to New York tomorrow, Lucien said regretfully. The board meeting can't be postponed again. I understand, Camille said, though her heart ached at the thought of him leaving. But I'll be back next weekend, Lucien promised. And I've been thinking, there's no reason I can't work from Charleston part of the time. I could get a place here, split my time between New York and here. You'd do that? Camille asked, surprised. Charleston is growing on me, Lucien said, with a smile. And there's this amazing florist here I'm quite fond of. Just fond of? Camille teased. Lucien's expression grew serious. Camille Harper, I've spent years building walls around my heart, keeping people at a distance. Then you accidentally boarded my plane, and in less than 2 weeks, you've completely changed my life. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Camille's breath caught. This isn't a proposal, Lucien clarified quickly. It's too soon for that. Even I know that. He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a flower with a small blue stone at its center. This belonged to my grandmother, Lucien explained. She gave it to me before she died and told me to give it to someone special, someone who saw the real me. He took the necklace out of the box. It's a forget-me-not. They symbolize true love and memories. "It's beautiful," Camille whispered as he fastened it around her neck. "I know we're just beginning," Lucien said, "and we have a lot to figure out. But I want you to know that no matter where I am, New York, Paris, or anywhere else, my heart is with you." "And mine with you," Camille said, touching the pendant gently. "Who would have thought that getting on the wrong plane would lead me to exactly where I was meant to be?" "Sometimes the wrong turn is the right one," Lucien said, drawing her close. "Sometimes getting lost is how you find your way home." As they sealed their promise with a kiss, Camille knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, distance, different backgrounds, or even the occasional appearance by Claire, what they had found together was worth fighting for. 6 months later, Camille stood in her flower shop, putting the finishing touches on a special arrangement of blue hydrangeas, white gardenias, and sprigs of lavender, her dream wedding flowers. The bell above the door jingled, and she looked up to see Lucien, entering with a smile. "Ready for dinner?" he asked, kissing her cheek. "Tommy and Sarah are meeting us at the restaurant." "Almost done," Camille said, adjusting a bloom. "What do you think?" Lucien studied the arrangement. "It's beautiful, but why these particular flowers?" Camille smiled mysteriously. "No reason. Just experimenting." What she didn't tell him was that these were the flowers she'd always imagined for her own wedding, someday. A wedding that seemed increasingly possible with each passing day, as Lucien split his time between New York and the small house he'd purchased just a few blocks from Harper's Blooms. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, the distance when Lucien had to be in New York, the occasional clash of their different worlds, Robert's ongoing health concerns. But through it all, they had each other. And it had all started with a wrong turn, a missed flight, and a window seat on a plane to Paris. As they walked hand in hand down the Charleston street, the forget-me-not pendant gleaming at Camille's throat, she said a silent thank you to fate, chance, or whatever had led her onto Lucien's plane that day. Sometimes the wrong plane takes you exactly where you're meant to be,